Okay, y'all, this is going to be a brief introduction with two examples on what the Pythagorean theorem is. Okay, so it's used with right triangles and right triangles only. So if I have a right triangle, say it looks something kind of like this, you always know it's a right triangle because there'll be a little box down there in the corner. That signifies that it is a 90-degree angle, which means that it is a right triangle. Okay, we're going to label these sides A, B, and C. Okay, where C is always opposite the 90-degree angle, and it's also always the longest length of your right triangle. Okay, so you have this right triangle where, let's put a different color, where A and B are legs, is what we call them. We call them legs. And C is the hypotenuse. Okay. Which is always opposite the right angle. Okay, and then also don't forget C is also always the longest side. Okay, now there's a formula to this. Okay, the formula says that, let's see if I could, let's do this in a green, strike green. Formula states that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Okay, and you can use this formula to find any missing side of your right triangle. So let's use this formula in order to solve a couple of examples. So let's say I had a right triangle. That looks something like this. Okay, let's say that this was 3, this is 4. Okay, and what would that mean that the longest side over here would be? Well, we don't know what it is, and we're going to label it C, because C is always the longest length, and it's always opposite the 90-degree angle. Okay, so use the formula, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now we know a couple of things. We know that a is equal to 3. We know that b is equal to 4. And we do not know what c is. That's what we got to find out. So let's replace a with 3, b with 4, and see where that takes us. So we got 3 squared plus 4 squared is equal to c squared. Well, 3 squared is what? It's not 3 times 2, so don't do that. It's not 6. Okay? 3 squared says that it's 3 times 3. And 3 times 3 is 9. Plus 4 squared, which is not 8, because we're not doing 4 times 2. We got to do 4 times 4, because that's what 4 squared means. And 4 times 4 is 16. And it equals c squared. Now we just have a basic addition problem. We have 9 plus 16, which gives us 25, and it equals c squared. Now how do I undo a square? I have to take the square root. So if I take the square root of both sides and cancel that out, I get c is equal to what? Well, what's the square root of 25? Well, the square root of 25 is 5, if you guys remember from the last chapter. And we just solved for c. We're all done. So that longest side length over here for C is 5. So our triangle is a 3, 4, 5 triangle. All right, let's try one more. Say I have another triangle, another right triangle. And let's say that this right triangle is, A is right here because we don't know what A is. Let's call this 8 and this 10. Okay. Well, we're going to use the same formula that we just used. So what's our formula? Formula is A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. And what do we know about our triangle? Well, we know that A is one that we have to solve for. We know what B is. B is 8. And C, which is opposite the 90-degree angle, is 10. So use this information, plug it into your formula, and see where we go from there. So we don't know what A is, so it stays A. We got B. What is B? B is 8. So plug in an 8. The formula says it's squared. Equals C squared. But what's C? C is 10, so we have 10 squared. All right, now let's solve it. A squared stays A squared. Plus, what's 8 squared? 8 squared is not 8 times 2, so it's not 16. 8 squared means 8 times 8. And 8 times 8 is 64. And then what's 10 squared? Well, 10 squared is not 10 times 2, so don't put 20. 10 squared is 10 times 10. And 10 times 10, we all know, is 100. Okay. Now what do? We have to keep going, we have to keep solving. What's my next step? My next step is to subtract 64 from both sides, because we're trying to get A all by itself over there. So we got to get rid of this 64. That cancels. A squared falls down. Equals, what is 100 minus 64? Well, 100 minus 64 is 36. Now what's my last step? I have to take the square root of both sides. So I cancel out the square. All I'm left with is an A, and it equals, well, what's the square root of 36? Well, the square root of 36 is 6. And you're all done. Alright, well, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. You may have an assignment on Google Classroom. Just make sure to double check. Hope you're staying safe.